Okay, well, let's flash her up and see what's going to happen here. So. Good morning, welcome to Jim's Hangar. Today in this beautiful spring day, it's almost up to zero, so that's a good thing. We thought it was going to get all the way up there, but it hasn't yet. Anyhow, today we just thought we'd welcome you, and seeing spring is in the air somewhere. So today I'm going to show you one of my classic cars. It's a 1950 Ford Custom, bullet nose. So let's take a look at that. So, this is a 1950 bullet nose. Now, why is it called a bullet nose? Well, because it's got a bullet sticking out the front. You know, in about, I think about 49, 50, 51, they all had the same look, whether it was a GM or a Ford or a Dodge. They all kind of had this round, referred to them as bullet nose. A lot of chrome on these old beasts. So, we just talk about it a little bit. This has a V8 in it. I'll just pop a hood and show you here in a second. You know, Ford introduced the V8 in 1932. They had a hell of a time with it because they couldn't figure a way to cast the block and then machine it out. Before that, they had V8s, but they put them together. They put two sides together, and it was a complicated thing. And this is a mass-produced V8, flathead 8. So they produced them in 32 to about 53, I think, or 54. By the time this come along, it had 100 horsepower and no issues. You know, you could drive, they were really dependable. In the beginning, it wasn't so much, but by this time they were. And this is the original motor, still runs great. So what else? It's got a, as you can see, it's got that sun veil on it, or whatever they call it, and it just keeps the sun, and you can adjust it. If it wasn't rusted solid, you could adjust it. Split windshield, like this had a lot of technical stuff to it. Now, I inherited this, kinda. What happened is one of my brothers wanted an older car, and I'm more into 57 Fords than I am in the 50s. So Tommy said, "Oh, find me a car." So I found him this car, and then I took it all the way down to his place in a trailer and sat there for 3 months. He never took it off. I said, "Do you want that car or not, Tom?" He said, "Well, not really, because the steering's too hard. It's manual steering. It's got a suicide knob. It's that old style of steering," and he just didn't like it. So I thought, well, I'll just put it in my garage, what the hell. So even though I didn't want it, it's a beautiful car. So even though this is a Ford Custom, it's got its own name. Now, I can't take credit for that name. It's called Ring Money. So I gotta figure, did the last guy buy the car instead of a ring? Or did he have to sell a car to buy a ring? I really don't know. It's just unique, though. We'll leave that there. It's got a few other things, like it's got these fins. Now, this wasn't a Ford fin. that I could find anyhow. But somebody customized them and they built them for Fords because fins were just coming in, not so much in the early 50s, but anything they could add on to a car, they would. So like Continental kits, which just doesn't have, but lots of chrome. So that's the story of this car. So here we are inside this 50 Ford. It's got a suicide knob. And the idea of these, because there's no power steering, is that when you were really going down the highway, maybe at 60 miles an hour, you could actually turn it with this. When you're in a parking lot, there's no way you're going to crank this wheel. It's just the way it is. The dash is pretty well unmolested in this. Somebody's added a water gauge. And then down here they put a modern radio. But the original radio is still in it, the clock is in it, and it works, at least it's right twice a day that I can see. It's got a auxiliary heater. Somebody, well, Ford probably sold it separate, because in those days you didn't get anything unless you paid for it. Not that you do today, but if you wanted, most cars didn't come with heaters because most cars are for the southern states. So this one, somebody added a heater at some point, or Ford did, and that's why all this add-on here is all added onto the dash because of the way they sold these cars back then. This has a 3 in the tree. The way that works, they call this a tree, the steering tree, and then you'd have reverse, first, second, and third. So all the hoods back in the day all had rods to hold up a hood, much like most Japanese cars have today. But all the newer cars got springs, and it was quite elaborate, where this works fine, as long as you don't knock it out. This is, it's got 2 hoses coming into the radiator instead of 1, because they used to go to each side. And then, like I say, somebody added the heating system to it. It says it's a Ford made in the USA. I was hoping it'd be Canadian, but they're all the same. So that's a flathead 8, and there's obvious why they call it a flathead 8. So yeah, that's just a little bit to know about this car. Okay, so as you can see, right in the bullet nose, it had an 8 here, signifying the 8-cylinder, of course. And then they had the typical Ford sign. And then they had these bullet nose ornaments. And these you could buy. You can still buy them around, and they just bolt on. Different ones for different cars. You see, it's a piece, just a short piece, and you could use it kind of when you're driving. If you keep the ditch, if you drive from there to there and you go to the edge of the road, on the gravel road, you'll never go into the ditch. You had to point, because it's the way it's set up, it's just the way it is. So keeps you out of the ditch. Of course, in the early 50s, they were talking about rockets and stuff, and they were talking about going to the moon, although they didn't do it until 63 or whenever it's 60. But there you are. They were getting ready to go to the moon. There was their first rocket. Anyhow, tough old car. We'll see what we can do with it. Well, thanks for watching this video about this 50 Ford. Next time, we'll bring you up to more modern stuff, like 1957, which is more, which I prefer. So until we see you then, may all your skies be blue.